travel into the 70s, I brought my expert along. 48 years of knowledge.
Yes, absolutely.
He's going to talk us through the 70s.
And many dead plant bodies strewn along the way while I learned.
Where do we start first in the 70s? What would you see in the 70s?
Chlorophytum.
How'd that get there?
Magic.
Magic.
Plant magic.
Now, you would see these where?
That's a loaded question.
When I mentioned the 70s, Mom mentioned the spider plant. Chlorophytum comosum vittata. It's known as the spider plant, and it showed up green initially in the 70s, right, Mom? They were green?
Yes, they were green.
And were these pretty common to be seen?
Yes, they did have the variegated ones, but they didn't have as many as they did of the solid green. And the solid green now, you can't even find it all.
Right.
I love the plant because it got very long leaves. I mean, the leaves were very long, very arched, beautiful, beautiful leaves. And then they got the big, beautiful spiders, or airplanes, as they also call it, the airplane plant. And it was just a graceful piece of art in your house that you have to water and hang on the ceiling. Not hard to grow. Not as forgiving as a Hoya, for example, but they're still not hard to grow. Oh, they're beautiful.
And it's a staple. Even
look at the beautiful. It's a white variegation, but it's almost a creamy white.
Yeah, and it's coming from the center, which makes it a vittata. One or the other. But it wouldn't be what you would see in the 70s, but we're going to use our creative license officer. And
show me that license, lady.
Oh, my creative license. The next plant of the 70s that my mom remembers is the aloe. This is my mother's aloe.
This is the traditional aloe, the one that everyone thinks of when they think of the burn plant, what they call it, the burn plant. And supposedly it's very good for treating burns, but I look at it as my child, and I wouldn't want to cut off one of my child's arms. Especially when there's burn medicine in the cabinet.
Right. So it's a medicinal, non-medicinal aloe. Is that right?
Yes. It's a medicinal, but don't you dare cut me aloe. It's got all kinds of new growth, and it's big and fat, just waiting for somebody to burn their arms, and I'm not going to let them cut my aloe. Here's the main plant, which is getting all of this new growth, and this is the little baby over here popping out of mommy. Here's the baby, and here's mommy. And this plant will get to be its size that you'd want to put on the floor, and it will stand up 3 feet or more tall. In the house.
In the house?
In the house.
So what kind of sun does it need?
Well, actually, even though it's a succulent, you don't want to put it in a window that's too bright, because I've had it in a window that was too bright for it, and it's washed the leaves out. It should be a little greener.
Oh, really? So it got a little burny?
Yeah, it didn't burn, but it sure did fade. And it's a beautiful plant, so it's really a shame.
Yeah, I love her.
So she'll be looking real good here pretty soon, because I'm pulling her out of that window and let her revert to the green.
So did you have an aloe in the 70s?
No, I did not. I didn't actually come into the aloes until, probably the year 1995. My misguided ideas that I felt it was beneath me, but now I am really sorry, and I chastise myself for it roundly. Now this is another type of aloe. It doesn't get as large. It will get, as large as this or so, but it stays relatively small. Now on this one, you have the variegation in the leaves there, as you can see, contrasting it with the regular aloe or the common aloe. And this one is having babies. 1, 2 new little babies coming up from the ground. Pluck them out, pot them in their own pot. They already have roots and they're ready to grow, and grow they will.
This plant was given to me by my mother.
Yes, I have the mother plant.
This also is a medicinal aloe. It's just a general basic aloe, but it's got the blue on it.
And it's not sunburned.
Yeah, it's not too sunburned. You can see there's a little sun stress on it.
Well,
but
look at this beautiful part of it here, all the new. And on this one, just like you had on the small one that you have, it's got a little baby out here. I don't know if you can see it.
I sure can.
Hold on. There's the baby right there, coming right off of mama.
That's the cool thing.
And I like to notice, please notice the beautiful shade of green. And if you don't touch it, like I just did, it looks like it has been iced or frosted.
A magic pothos appears.
Wonderful plant, easy to grow, can grow in low light.
But it loves light though.
Loves the light and
Loves
will
the light.
explode with the proper lighting.
They're known to be called like the devil's ivy because they've been known to take over forests and kill them. And it's pretty crazy if you see pictures of that. So tell us about the 70's and pothos.
That's actually one of the first two plants that I ever had was a heartleaf philodendron and a pothos. And I had it trained so that it would grow up a wall and over a drapery. So it would go up and go over a drapery rod like this. And it was really, really stunningly pretty and quite different than the way anybody had ever grown it at that time.
That sounds amazing. People love trailing these plants nowadays. So what would you train it up the wall with?
Just put little push pins in and catch the vine. And then as the vine would grow up, I'd catch it with another push pin. And it would just keep growing up. And I would just keep adding push pins as
So we have
the tendril would grow out and allow.
Awesome. So we could say that we have a pioneer pothos trailing person here.
Yes, I guess we could put it that way.
You really just gotta let these guys dry out. For my plants, I kind of subscribe to Feast and Famine. I get them really wet and then I let them go a while and really dry out. And these guys really do like it on the dry side. That's when they seem to grow the most for me, at least.
Everybody's different, and whatever works for you is what you should do.
Right. So I've had this one just for a few months. This is a quarantine panic plant that I bought. And look at all the fun stuff that it's done. They're really fun to watch because you get new action every day.
Yes, I can understand. And at least it's a nice friend to have in these quarantine days.
Right. Bring the 70's into your quarantine days.
This happens to be a velvet leaf philodendron or philodendron micans. As you can see, the same plant can come in various varieties. This one, because of its different lighting in which it's been grown, is primarily green. Now this one, because it was grown in a bright window, is a little sun washed out. It's bleached, it's not dying, but you can see the difference in the coloration. Now normally when they're like them this when it's a normal plant that hasn't been left at the whim and whimsy of the sunlight coming through the window, is a deep, deep green with a red underbelly, or I'd say a hot pink underbelly. And it really makes a lovely, lovely plant. And this one needs probably a little more sun. We need to deepen the green. The red is coming out in this.
In reference, this is Mutter's plant, and this one is mine. I have it in bright indirect light. It gets pretty good sun. So the sun has recently been changed on it. It was in medium-ish, lowish, not ideal growing conditions before. But now I have it in more light. And it's still pretty green. I'm pretty happy with it. But in accordance to the 70's, you would see these around?
Not really as much. They had the old standard, it's a philodendron cordatum. And that is a plant that looks very much like this, in fact almost identical, except it didn't have any of the velvet on its leaves. It was just a solid green leaf shaped like a heart.
Just a shiny green leaf.
And they grew like crazy. They're the easiest plant for a person who kills plants to grow. I don't think you can kill this plant.
Lovely. Have you gone back in time yet? Yes, fluff, fluff.
We're now looking at the Hoya carnosa, which is typically they have different variegations nowadays, but they aren't one from the 70's. This is the old throwback that are solid green. They can also be called the wax plant, and that alludes to their blossoms, which is the most beautiful color of pink. They come out and the blossom itself looks waxy and it smells really good.
This is what you would see in the 70's. Now in 2020, we can get a plant anywhere online. You can get pretty much anything if you have enough money. So, how did you acquire plants in the 70's?
It was really difficult because they didn't have plants in the grocery stores and the like, other outlets like Home Depot or anything. In fact, the Home Depot didn't even exist back then. So that you'd have to go to a greenhouse to get a plant. But I had one Hoya like this in my son's room when he was growing up. And it would bloom and it was hard to kill, my word. That plant got ignored because it was not with the rest of the plants that got all the love. But it just grew and it bloomed, and it was one of the most rewarding plants I have ever grown. And like I say, it got ignored a lot because I had a lot of things to do at the time, and I couldn't kill this plant. It was absolutely wonderful. And it grew and it got large and lovely and full on the top, and it had the tendrils on the bottoms, and it's really a wonderful plant, especially if you are plant challenged.
It really is. It's a great plant for beginners. I neglect mine. They thrive it. Well, I dote on them. Really, I love Hoyas. And to think in the 70's to have green Hoya everywhere would be pretty darn awesome. Do they hang in baskets typically? Or
Typically, yes, because they have so many tendrils, and tendrils being part of the beauty of the plant are displayed to their best selves when they're suspended from the ceiling or some such.
Living their best life. Another plant that you might see in the 70's is the string of hearts. It's a traditional plant. It's a viney succulent.
Ceropegia woodii.
Yep, Ceropegia woodii.
Actually, in the 70's, it was just starting to make its entrance into society. It was fairly a new plant at that time. You didn't see them very often, And when you did, you'd better get it quick because it was going to go.
So they were hot, 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 huh?
They were pretty hot, hot, hot. Mainly because it was so different than anything that was out there. They call it the rosary vine, the string of hearts. But it is really a lovely plant, if you'll notice.
This is a long guy. He's a little bald.
Goes on and on and on.
My thing with like string of hearts, they have an issue of going bald on top because they need above lighting. Well, I purchased this one and I purchased it. It came to me bald, so I took some of these tendrils and I wrapped it around the top and bobby pinned the nodes to the dirt, and it's been rooting a little bit. It's doing something, I think. We'll find out. And my mother has one of these, and it is actually blooming right now.
They're very interesting blossoms. They're long and thin, and they're pink purple.
This is a 70s thing.
Yes.
Maidenhair ferns. This is something my mom told me she saw in the 70s. Where did you see these?
Actually, I saw them. Just remember back to what I told you. When I was buying plants, I was in either Wyoming or Oklahoma, and the only place that you could get plants back then was not at the grocery store, not at the local variety store. You had to go to the greenhouse to buy them. So I found them at the greenhouse.
And you were lucky enough to have a plant buddy?
I was at that time, but I swear I was the Lone Ranger out there because I was the only one of my friends that liked houseplants, except for my next door neighbor, and she and I. We like to go garage sailing, we like to go to greenhouses, and by golly, we spent a lot of time at the greenhouses. But that's where we got our plants from.
And that was before my time. I was just a twinkle in my mom's eye.
Yes, just a twinkle.
I kill these. This is what I do, unfortunately. I have 2 in Ziploc bags as we speak. But
Yes, I know, but they're varieties. They're not the old standard. This is the old standard, and I don't think you're going to kill it.
You don't think so?
No, I don't, because I know that you're supposed to have a lot of humidity, and I didn't have a lot of humidity, but I loved the plant so much when I bought it that I was going to try it without the humidity anyway. And it grew. Although in a perfect world, it should be in a lot of humidity, and you're probably going to get an awful lot more plant growth than I did. But this plant is so special. It has beautiful shaped leaves, little heart-shaped scalloped leaves on it, and checking underneath, you can see black stems
So
on
cool.
here.
I love
And they
these
are
plants.
absolutely beautiful. They make the plant look so interesting. And they, like I said, they are beautiful.
I kill these, unfortunately. I view them from a distance because I don't want them to die.
Truthfully, you don't know if you're going to kill this one or not.
It's
Give it a
true.
chance. Give it a chance. Give yourself a chance.
My mom has faith in me. That's
Yes,
so nice.
I have faith in you. You're a good plant, Mommy.
Oh, shucks. But maidenhair fern, another classic retro 70s
And
plant.
check out the beautiful black stems on this beauty. It's one thing that makes this plant so unique and so beautiful. You can view the black stems through the leaves, and they add so much interest to this plant. It's definitely a plant worth trying. Don't be intimidated. If you love the look of the plant, try it.
Just buy Ziploc bags, 2.5 gallon size, probably. Because they wither back to nothing and then...
Not necessarily. You haven't withered this back to anywhere. So give it a chance. Give yourself a chance. Give yourself a chance.
I can do it.
Yes, you can. And it's so worth the effort.
So we got rid of the desk because it was getting in the way of these amazing larger plants that we have to show you that were popular in the 70s. One of them being a monstera, like today. It was very popular. It was a staple in the 70s home, right, Mother?
Yes.
Did you see them pretty much everywhere?
No.
Were they very big?
No.
They didn't look very good?
Well, they look fine for what they were, but they don't look like this. I don't think people were able to grow them at that point in time up enough to see the splits in the leaf.
Well, that's what I was reading about. I read that in the 70s, everyone wanted to bring the outdoors in, and they did, but they didn't have access to the internet like we do now. And they didn't have access to care guides and the like we do now. And so the poor plants suffered for many, and I guess it turned off a whole generation of plant owners, the 80s. Not that they didn't exist. Plants were still popular in the 80s to some extent, but I think it bummed some people out. And then there were green thumbs, right? Natural green thumbs that existed in the 70s.
Yes, but I never grew one of these.
You never did?
No, they were popular back then, yes, but I never could find one.
Really?
Being limited as I was to my source of obtaining plants.
They do take over, and they're beautiful, and they're still amazing. After all these years, it's still, one of the favorite plants of all. Monstera. Snake plant. We all know what that is. Apparently, in the 70s, there were a lot of these around. Also known as mother-in-law's tongue. But now in the Dracaena family, I'll move this. None of us gets too triggered because it triggers me a little bit still. Back to the happy little snake plant here. In the 70s, Mom, tell us about the snake plant in the 70s. It was a staple, wasn't it?
It was a very popular plant. One of the things that made it so popular was the fact that you could grow it in practically any kind of a light. Like if you had a space where you needed a low light plant, this would work absolutely fine. It wouldn't grow a lot, but it would sure retain its original shape, and you could keep it there as an accent plant. And if you really wanted it to grow, you drag it out and put it into some more, a place with better lighting, and it will explode for you.
If you give it some sun, these things blow up. They do tolerate low light very well, but yeah, we got a bunch of little babies over here. I think why everyone's getting so triggered about the move from Sansevieria to Dracaena is because people feel really passionately about these plants. They can pretty much do anything. They come in all kinds of forms. In the 70s, what did they look like for the most part?
Most part, they looked like this, except there were more, there was less variegation or striation on it, and they grew the same. It's the same exact pattern. So they just didn't have the different kinds of variegation on the leaves.
Well, somebody told me you had one of these for over 20 years.
Oh, I had it. It was longer than that. I brought it from my home in Oklahoma to my new home in Boise, Idaho, where I'd grown it several years in Oklahoma, and I grew it for more than 20 years in Boise.
Awesome. The amazing thing about these things is they come in so many forms. I mean, look at the cylindrica here.
Now this is one solid tube of plant here. This is not a leaf like this, which is flat, as you can see. This is cylindrical, exactly what its name implies. It's a large plant that has a solid leaf. I can hardly wait to have this plant have a baby so we can see how it grows.
Speaking of other forms, this is your beautiful Sansevieria.
It's a low growing. It won't grow any taller than this probably, but it grows it's covered this pot, and I only had 3 plants in it to begin with, or maybe 4. But now I have, with the babies it's put out, here we have 1 new little baby, and we have several more interspaced in here. It's grown to cover the entire pot, and it only took a year for it to do this. So,
What kind of light do you have it in?
I have it in an east window actually, but it's something that gets very strong light in the morning, and then solid light throughout the end of the day. An interesting thing about this, I've had this plant for quite a while, and I noticed that new variegation is coming out in this, and it isn't unlike what the new variegation is on this.
These little cylindricas have attitude. They're funny because for the longest time it looked like it was flipping me off. But it grows so quickly that it's now too many fingered to be flipping anyone off.
And here we have 2 different varieties of the Schefflera, commonly known as the Australian Schefflera and the Hawaiian Schefflera. They're very easy to grow. This is something though that you need to have the right light source for it to really reward you with good growth.
So let's get a better look at this one, because this is the one you told me, right? This one was the one that was really popular in the 70's.
No, this one was.
Oh, the bigger one?
This one. And then this one came out, and people had them both. No, this was the one that came out. At least where I was living at the time, this was the more popular of the 2, or at least this was the one that you could find to buy more than you could this one. And then maybe 10 years later, you got this one down there, and people were going, Schefflera, but this is a Schefflera. So, well, this can be a Schefflera too. It just depends on the type, the part of the world you're from. I have it growing in an east window that is actually shaded during the day and the morning and the afternoon, because its window faces out onto my deck, which is a covered deck, and it still has gotten enough light to produce the growth that we've seen.
Mom saved it from my house. I was gonna bonsai it, and I still might.
No, you won't. I will just take. No, you won't.
I won't bonsai my mom's plant.
No, you won't, because your mother may consider mayhem.
Mayhem?
Mayhem.
What does that mean?
You better run for your life. I love my plant.
It's beautiful.
I've worked hard. Actually, it's worked harder, because look at the beautiful thing it's become. And it's so rewarding. So rewarding.
Fiend, and we're out.